Yes guys, welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix YouTube video. My name's FPL Nacho, and in this video we are going to be looking at the top transfers going into game week 16. Of course, we need to cover off the best Mbeumo replacements, but also want to deep dive into some defenders that you need to consider buying, and also those differentials to help you climb those overall ranks. So as always, if you are new around here, please do consider smashing that subscribe button, and if you enjoy today's video, please also drop a like. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. So as I mentioned, first up, I think the big topic that everybody wants answering is who is the best Bryan Mbeumo replacement? Now, the latest reports from Thomas Frank suggest that he is going to be out for a couple of weeks. And the problem with Brentford is that they blank in game week 18. So Mbeumo is definitely going to miss this weekend. And it sounds like he is also going to miss game week 17. Because they also blank in game week 18, there's a chance he might be back the following game week, but you're missing 3 game weeks worth. And unfortunately, at the price point of 7.1 million, it's just such a competitive price point in the game. Selling him is the right move in order for you to buy a better option. So I've got 4 options on our screens here, all at different price ranges, all offering different value. But I do want to put on record and say that if you're trying to retain money at the 7.1 to 7.5 million bracket, I do think Jarrod Bowen long term is the best option for your FPL teams. In terms of guaranteed minutes, he is the best of the bunch. And also in terms of just historical, this guy is somebody who consistently delivers FPL points. And looking at the fixtures for West Ham coming up, they actually have an okay run. They have Fulham away, then Wolves at home, Man United at home, Arsenal away, then Brighton at home, followed by Sheffield United. So a few tricky games in there, but you're never going to get the perfect run. And I do think if you are looking to spend the cash, Jarrod Bowen is the best alternative, but you will need a bit of money in the bank. And the only other thing I will say is, if you are going to be investing Bryan Mbeumo to a Jarrod Bowen, make sure it doesn't actually affect your transfers later down the line. You might actually use the money in the bank that you needed for other upgrades in your team, like a Darwin Núñez to an Ollie Watkins in game week 18. So that's Bowen covered off. I want to touch on these 4 players. So first up, Cole Palmer, one of the most bought players going into game week 16. And it's worth noting his price actually did go up last night to 5.4 million. So he is slightly more expensive than it says on your screens. But looking at the underlying numbers, he is one of the best in each department. XG per 90, 0.53. Now, of course, we need to take into account he is the penalty taker at Chelsea, so his non-pen XG actually comes down to around 0.2. So the penalties are actually skewing the data. But like I say to everybody, at 5.3, 5.4 million for a midfielder who's also the penalty taker, that is just a massive plus side when you are buying in FPL options. That's only a good thing. And also the expected assists at 0.3, a big chance creator in that team. He is really basically the only one carrying the team, it seems, right now, with such poor performances from Chelsea week in, week out. So I think his game time is actually pretty secure over the longer term. Nkunku, yes, is going to come into this Chelsea team, but I don't see him displacing Cole Palmer anytime soon. I think there are other players in the team playing worse than Cole Palmer whose game time is going to be affected. So first out the bat, I want to say, I do think Cole Palmer ticks a lot of boxes. Chelsea are top of the fixture ticker for the next 6 game weeks. Everton away, I think, is tricky, but then Sheffield United at home, Wolves and Crystal Palace at home, really good fixtures. So Cole Palmer at 5.4 million seems like a real obvious transfer for a lot of FPL managers, and I'm right behind people doing that. One that is a bit of a differential is going to be Hee Chan at Wolves. Now, he has been the goal scorer right now of 8 league goals, and you can see that with the expected goals at 0.43 per 90. Also not on penalties, so that's a big factor. All of these have been open play goals. And he has actually really stepped up to the plate in the absence of Pedro Neto. And we also do think Pedro Neto will be returning soon. And I think that only enhances Hwang as an option because he was scoring goals while Pedro was in the team. And I think he's going to continue once Neto returns as well. You can see on the big chances he leads the way at 0.69. He definitely is more of the goal scorer in these options that we are looking at right now. And I really like him as a differential if you want to go there. 16 predicted points over the next 4 is actually better than that of Cole Palmer's. And the fixtures for Wolves as well are equally good. Nottingham Forest at home, who are all over the place right now. He could definitely have a field day. Then West Ham away, a tricky game. But Chelsea at home, I think he could definitely do well in. Brentford away and Everton at home. So a decent run of fixtures. And I think Hwang, in terms of a goal scorer, is probably the best of the bunch right now if you are looking for a differential. Now, outside of Cole Palmer, the other real popular move this game week is going to be Gordon. Now, he did blank in game week 15, and Newcastle looked really tired, it is worth noting. And they also still have lots of fixtures coming up. Importantly, that make or break home game against AC Milan in the Champions League. So I do think we need to consider that when we are buying Newcastle players. They obviously need to continue their league run, but there is going to be one eye on that massive game at St James's Park in the Champions League. However, Gordon at 6 million is a great enabler. What I really like about Gordon is if you're not free hitting in game week 18, his fixture is fantastic away against Luton. So he is a great enabler. You'll be selling Mbeumo, who blanked in game week 18, for someone like Gordon, who has a great fixture. I think his game time's pretty locked in. He's a fit lad, so I don't think he's going to get rotated like the likes of Lascelles possibly will do, just due to age and all that sort of aspect. Decent underlying numbers, as you can see on your screens, and also the predicted points are right up there at 17.3. So I think Gordon is a great replacement. And if you're one of those that already has Cole Palmer, I'd probably say Gordon is slightly more preference to Hwang, because what I didn't state was Hwang's actually one yellow card away from a suspension. So you do need to take that into account over this busy festive period. Now, last up, basically the same price as Jarrod Bowen, is going to be Phil Foden. And this is really the high upside risky pick. The next two for Man City are amazing, away against Luton and at home against the Crystal Palace team who literally cannot keep a clean sheet. The big problem with Phil Foden is that he blanks in game week 18. So you are basically buying a player that doesn't have a game in a couple of game weeks' time. If they had a game then, in game week 18, this would be the most obvious transfer ever in Phil Foden. The numbers are decent, 0.3 XG per 90, 0.19. He started 11 of the last 12 league games, so he hasn't really been rotated in this Pep team. And I do think he is an amazing option for our teams. For me, though, it is just a case of if you do bring him in, that blank in game week 18 is a real problem. And you may need to look to sell him straight away or potentially free hit if your squad isn't good enough to sacrifice it. So to conclude, I think Jarrod Bowen long-term is an obvious transfer for your teams if you are blessed with loads of money in the bank. Otherwise, I'll rank them as Cole Palmer, the first alternative to bring in, followed by Gordon and then Hwang. If your team is suitable, Foden is a brilliant differential. So next up, let's move into some Chelsea defenders that, even though they've been really bad, we do need to consider for our teams. So the two that we're going to consider right now is going to be Reece James and Levi Colwill. The problem with Chelsea defence right now is I literally do not know week in, week out who is going to play outside of Robert Sanchez in goal. Thiago Silva has been playing pretty much every game for Chelsea, but I personally just think there is going to be a time where the handover, the passing of the torch is going to happen at that back line, and his legs are eventually going to give way over this festive period. So I do think there will be rotation impending for Thiago Silva. Disasi, again, a very, very difficult one to predict their game time alongside Badiashile. So I've put Reece James and Colwill as the only two that I'll consider in this Chelsea team. However, before we touch on the Chelsea defenders, what I do want to say is, if you're a manager that's looking to sell Saliba or maybe a Matty Cash, I personally would have Pedro Porro over both of these players. Now, Chelsea's fixtures coming up, as you can see on the screen, are a little bit mixed. I don't even think guaranteed clean sheets are over this period, it is worth noting. Spurs, over the same period, have Newcastle at home, Forest away, Everton at home, Brighton away. I'd probably say they're pretty even, but what you get in Pedro Porro is somebody whose underlying numbers are absolutely fantastic and the game time is absolutely guaranteed. Only reason he misses out is if he has a knock. Whereas these two, I don't feel as confident. So first up, if you are looking to do a defender transfer, I think Pedro Porro is better than both of these. However, if you are looking to invest in a Chelsea defender, we need to touch on this. So Reece James is about $1 million more expensive than Levi Colwill, it is worth noting. So he is more of a premium defender in comparison to these centre-backs. His XG is slightly better, but not necessarily that much. But the expected assists is phenomenal at 0.59 per 90. Now, of course, Reece James hasn't played many minutes this season compared to Levi Colwill. I believe Reece James has played about a third of the minutes. So we are looking at a very small sample size, but still worth noting, and we know historically Reece James is one of the best defenders in the game for FPL value and attacking output. 6.22 expected FPL points per 90 also shows that, and he is leading the way for predicted points over the next 4 game weeks. If I had to buy one, it would be Reece James. I think Levi Colwill is a good enabler into that Chelsea team, but I'm being honest with you, he could easily be sacrificed by Pochettino at any point during this season for a Badiashile or a Cucurella at left back. If I knew that Colwill was going to play week in, week out, I think he's a good investment at 4.5, but I don't feel comfortable selling a Matty Cash or a Saliba to go down to a Levi Colwill. The only way I consider Levi Colwill is if you were maybe doing like a Mark Guy at a similar price to go sideways to a Levi Colwill. If I was buying Reece James, I think I would have to accept that rotation could happen due to injury reoccurrences, but he is worth the pain over this period. So James would be my pick. You are in for a world of pain at times, but I do think the upside is definitely there for him. And Chelsea really need him in this team based on the performances we've seen over the last few weeks. So Reece James is your man. Colwill is a good transfer only if you're selling another boring centre-back like a Mark Guy, for example. So last up, I want to touch on some attacking differentials that if you're having a bad season so far, this could propel you up your mini leagues or your overall rank. So the 3 players we have in question here are going to be serious differentials. Maybe not Raheem Sterling, because there has been a bit of purchase in him over the last few weeks, but the other 2 are outrageously differential. So first up, Raheem Sterling. In that Chelsea team, we've already touched on the fixtures being great for the long term. And somebody who is actually a senior player in this Chelsea team. And right now, we saw it in the Man United game. Chelsea were all over the place with players who haven't really had it in the Premier League right now or actually experienced the tough times, I would say. Sterling's one of those where if the going gets tough, I do think Pochettino will fall back on him for his experience. Otherwise, he's relying on people like Broha, Nicholas Jackson, Mudryk. I don't think they are above Sterling in the pecking order. So I do think game time for Sterling is going to be consistent over this period. And he is a bit of a flat track bully we have seen. Hasn't necessarily done phenomenally well in the big games, but in the smaller games, he has delivered. And when we look at the games, Sheffield United at home in particular, and Palace at home, I could see an opportunity for big hauls from Raheem Sterling. He's one of the few players in the game that actually has that double-digit potential that we all crave to have in FPL. 0.29 XG per 90 is decent, and 0.16 XA per 90 is also solid reading. And he's also getting the big chances in this Chelsea team alongside Nicholas Jackson, but we know how Nicholas Jackson does with those big chances. So right now, Raheem Sterling is hovering around 9% owned, which is still a bit of a differential in the game, it is worth noting. I do prefer Cole Palmer if you are looking to buy one Chelsea attacker, and I would be cautious if you were looking to double up on the Chelsea attack. I just think we're all over the shop right now, and that we are basically a Jekyll and Hyde team. We have great weeks, and then we are the worst team in the league. So I think Sterling is a bit of a punt for you, but over this period, he is a flat track bully. And if any Chelsea midfielder is going to get those double-digit returns, it definitely will be Raheem Sterling. And he could be a good Mbeumo replacement if you want to go there. Now, look at another big differential is going to be Garnacho at 4.7 million. Look, Ten Hag, I don't think Garnacho is the greatest player in the world. I think his output is still a little bit ropey in the final third, but Ten Hag saw against Chelsea, if you play the players that actually want to play for you, you get a result. Even if the performance was a little bit poor, I do think Garnacho is one of those players that is going to get game time over this period. And Bournemouth at home looks like a great entry point. Bournemouth have been really impressive so far in the last month. However, defensively, I still think the underlying numbers suggest Man United are going to get opportunities in this game. And his underlying numbers are okay. 0.29 XG per 90, 0.17. I think if you're looking for the ultimate punt in midfield at 4.7 million, this is your man. The one thing I would say is I definitely wouldn't be doing Mbeumo to Garnacho. The only way I consider this is if maybe you were looking at a fifth midfielder at 4.7 million. This is one of the best enablers in the game. So, yes, he could be rotated at time to time. Rashford probably does come in eventually, but I think Ten Hag would be crazy to do so. So, do not be doing Mbeumo to Garnacho, but if maybe you are enabling your fifth midfielder, Garnacho is your man. So last up is Wolves' Cunha. Now, of course, this is a forward in the game. The other two were midfielders. And he has been a real good performer for Wolves, but a little bit underwhelming so far this season. However, he has started to actually deliver attacking returns with 2 assists and 2 goals in the last 4 league matches. We're starting to see that player emerge in the Wolves team. Finally, maybe someone who's going to replace the shadow of Raul Jimenez. And at 5.6 million, he's a really interesting player for our FPL teams. Now, do not be selling Haaland for him. Do not be selling Watkins for him. But maybe if you had a slightly different structure and you were looking for a 3 up front, Cunha is a good enabler. The fixtures are actually great. We discussed this, one of the best over the next 6 game weeks. His game time is pretty much secure. I'm just looking at it right now. He started pretty much every game for Wolves. He sometimes comes off around the 85th minute, but that's it. He is pretty much guaranteed over this festive period, barring injuries. And the underlying numbers, they're not through the roof, but if you were to say to me some of the best fixtures in the league, one of the good teams in the league, Wolves are quite consistent, it is worth noting, and also somebody who's starting to find their feet. I think it's a great differential at 5.6 million, but again, it's very specific because I know a lot of FPL managers have a 3-5-2 formation, so it probably doesn't suit them. But if you're one of those few managers that has a 3-4-3, maybe you're stuck with someone like an Evan Ferguson or an Edouard and you want to sell him, Cunha is a brilliant differential for this game week. So that is going to wrap up today's video, guys. I really hope it's provided some value going into this game week 16 deadline. It's a crazy period over December, so make sure you are keeping aware of any of those deadlines. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please do consider dropping a like and smashing that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Cheers.